If you've ever looked up at your ceiling and thought, wow, this popcorn ceiling has got to go, trust me, you're not alone. Today we're tackling a DIY job that many dread, but it's easier than you think, once you know the steps. So if you're wondering whether tackling this messy DIY job that many people dread is worth it, you're in the right place. By the end of this video, your ceiling will be smooth and modern, and the popcorn will be a thing of the past. But there's a catch. This project isn't without challenges, and if you don't do it right, it could turn into an absolute nightmare. First things first, cover everything, the floor, the walls, your furniture, because things are about to get messy. Now, if you can remove your furniture, you're gonna have a lot easier time tidying up. And if you're gonna paint the walls, wait till you're done with the popcorn ceiling removal before you paint them. So remembering that I've never done this before, I just got a spray bottle with warm water. And then I got these safety goggles because these are the ones that form like a seal around your eyes, so you really don't want anything falling into your eyes. And then mask, okay. And I'm gonna put this hood on. This is the reason I wore this, so I don't get it all in my hair. Okay. And then I'm just gonna use a 12-inch scraper, okay? This is like a putty tool, like where you do mudding on the ceiling or whatever. So we're gonna spray this, and then we'll just see. Give it about 10 to 15 minutes to absorb the moisture. If you skip this step, trust me, it's going to be a lot harder to scrape off and you'll end up with gouges in your ceiling. You want the ceiling to be damp but not soaked. If it's dripping, it's too wet. Here comes the most satisfying part, the scrape. Gently but firmly work your scraper across the wet popcorn ceiling. Watch it peel away. Take your time with this. It's tempting to rush, but going too fast could damage the drywall underneath, and that's a whole nother headache you don't want. The spray bottle was working okay, but I was getting cramps in my hands because it was taking so long to soak the ceiling. So I got out my paint sprayer. Now ideally you'd actually want to use a lawn and garden sprayer, but I just don't have one. So I used what I had. And this made it so much faster. Look at how those chunks are just flying off the ceiling. Work your way around the ceiling. Work in small sections. Wet 4x4 parts of the ceiling, let it soak, and then come back and scrape it. You see here, I'm trying to scrape the ceiling, but nothing's coming off. Well, it just wasn't wet enough, so I had to refill my water tank and let it soak. What if things don't go so smoothly? Sometimes the popcorn won't come off easily, or you'll find imperfections underneath. If that happens, don't panic. We can fix it. Done the first section, and as you can see, it's actually really good. There's a few parts where I took off a bit much, but I'm actually not gonna spackle them. I'm gonna primer and do 2 coats of paint, so I think it'll be fine. I am gonna use a sander to just smooth down some of these parts. I should have planned that a bit better because I'm just gonna have to use my hand sander, but it's a really small area here. So here's my reflections. It was actually a lot easier than I thought. I don't think my ceiling's been painted because I read that if your ceiling is painted, it's way, way harder. It's just really messy. Like this small area took me about an hour. Ew, an hour and a half. Can't get it off. I guess it's part of me now. Okay, so yeah, and I think like, you know, I'll sand it, prime paint, and it'll look amazing. I can't wait. I thought it would be worthwhile to give you a close-up of what I'm really trying to sand. So there's some spots like this, you see, where when I took the popcorn ceiling off, just like this kind of remained. So I'm trying to smooth that. I think that it's pretty smooth now, and I can just prime and paint and you won't be able to see it. The other spots were like where there were, you know, kind of like ups and downs, peaks and valleys in those ceiling. I think this is pretty much the best I can do. I am gonna do a little bit of a hand sand just on any places that were too close to the light that I can't get in, but I think this is as good as it's gonna get for now. Oh yeah, remember when I said this was a messy project? I wasn't kidding.
Once you've scraped the popcorn away, it's time to smooth everything out. Use a sanding pole or a power sander to buff out any rough patches. Now, this is what I saw in every tutorial, but it didn't work for me. Why? Because I had this texture left on my ceiling that looked like knockdown texture, so it wasn't going to be as simple as that. After trying with a power sander and getting nowhere, I got a ceiling sander. And this was no joke. It's heavy and hard to maneuver as a 5'2" woman. The only good part was that there was very little dust because of the ability to attach the shop vac.
Show you how this is set up. So this is my shop vac, and it is connected to a hose that goes and it attaches into this machine. So that's why when you sand, it virtually has like no dust, because also the sander. So I think this is good and bad. It makes it kind of heavier because you see this edge, this is like what keeps all the dust inside, and then it goes into these holes, right? But if you don't have these, it's gonna be a lot easier to sand, but you'll definitely get more dust everywhere, because if you look at my floors, like there's hardly any dust on them. Just wanted to give you my thoughts as a very petite person trying to do this. So the actual machine weighs like 10 pounds, and I consider myself to be pretty active. Like I go to the gym and stuff, but this is like holding this up continuously for 10 minutes and you're like moving it around. This is not like doing reps. So it is actually really heavy. And when I went back and looked at it, a lot of the people who were doing this, they were men, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, however big a big man is. So, and you can see like their biceps were huge. Obviously I don't have huge biceps, so that makes it a bit harder. If you take lots of breaks, I think it's fine. I'm like stretching my forearms. I think it would be really hard to do the actual popcorn removal with this. I will try it in other parts of my house, but even just sanding it, I had to get to a pretty gritty paper. Like I'm using P180 on like a ceiling, but I usually wouldn't use that. I started off with the 240, so like I'm just crossing my fingers that when I prime and paint, I think it's gonna be fine, but we shall see.
We're getting close to the end, but before you even think about priming and painting, make sure you clean your ceiling and your walls. Now there is gonna be fine particle dust, so you can use a Swiffer duster like I did. Finally, we're ready for the finishing touches. I put a little bit of drywall filler on the ceiling where there were any gouges, and then I sanded them smooth. There was a huge mess everywhere, so make sure you are being really diligent with wearing a mask and eye protection, and you gotta vacuum a lot. Apply a coat of primer to seal the drywall. I'm using bin 123. This is a type of primer that actually hides all the imperfections, and it's really important to prime your ceiling so that your paint has something to stick to. Otherwise, it's just gonna get absorbed onto the rough drywall. Oh yeah, did I tell you I wasn't able to remove my pot lights? They were in so tight that I couldn't actually pop them out, so painting this was a lot harder. So if you've got any light fixtures, just make sure you remove them from your ceiling. This is that moment where all your hard work pays off. When a fresh coat of paint goes on, your ceiling will look brand new. No more dated popcorn texture.
After 2 coats of primer, it looks pretty good. A lot of those imperfections are gone. The one thing I would say is, unless you have some really, really deep gouges, don't mud it. Because if you can see around this light fixture, right, when the light shines this way, you can see this. And it's really hard to mud on the ceiling. Like honestly, it's just really hard.
For the paint, I used Benjamin Moore's Regal line in White Dove OC17. This is the same color that I'm painting my walls, but I used a matte finish on the ceiling and a satin finish on the walls. You can use ceiling paint on the ceiling, but I just found that this paint is so much nicer than ceiling paint, and it's only $20 more, so for me, it's worth just splurging a tiny bit to get that professional finish. Take a look at that. No more popcorn, no more mess, just a clean, smooth ceiling that completely modernizes the look of the room. Not bad for a DIY project, right? Sure, it took some effort, but it's totally worth the result.